You're listening to episode 220 of Mitolife Radio. I am Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Catharine Arnston of EnergyBits. Catharine became interested in algae in 2008 when her sister was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she started researching alkaline foods and alkaline diets, and that led her to Spirulina and Chlorella. She started diving into the research and then was led to start her company called EnergyBits. And what's interesting is in my raw vegan days, I was slamming hundreds of tablets of Spirulina and Chlorella, but I was unaware that a lot of companies are using high heat in their processing. So what makes hers so different is that they are processed with low heat, and so it retains a lot more of the nutrients, as she'll talk about, including superoxide dismutase, or SOD. So in this episode, she talks about the fiber content of some of these algae, the blue pigment that triggers apoptosis in cancer cells. Is spirulina actually an algae? How many tablets Catharine takes every day? The relationship between chlorophyll, coenzyme Q10, and light, the benefits of spirulina and chlorella for brain health, and more. So enjoy the show. Here is Catharine Arnston. All right, we are here with Catharine Arnston. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Matt. Thank you. So glad to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. I've seen your brand over the years. We were just chatting before I hit record that I used to go to all these different health conferences and paleo conference and the biohacking conference. And I guess I just never you always get pulled to different directions, especially if you're walking around with a group. And so I just never had the opportunity to talk with you guys, but
yeah,
I wish I would have now. So,
well, that's okay. I tell people it's never too late to feel great. So, whether it's your age, and I'm no spring chicken. Maybe later I'll reveal my age, but whatever age you're at, algae will make you feel better, and it does it from all the unique nutrients that are found in it. And the way we grow and dry ours preserves those nutrients in a way that other companies are not able to based on their processes. We can go into that in a bit more detail. But anyways, yeah, algae's awesome. Great. Algae was the first life on Earth 4 billion years ago. There was no life on Earth before algae, and it was a cyanobacteria that's first started, and it was an anaerobic cell. And nobody knows exactly why it started growing, but it released oxygen because it generated ATP. And after about a billion years, there was enough oxygen on Earth for aerobic cells, which were larger. And then that led to the rest of the life on Earth as we know it. So algae was the first one here, and it's still here.
Yeah, it's funny. We were just packing books because I'm moving soon. I think you're as well. And One of the books I have tons. It's called Eat Light and Feel Bright, like microalgae solutions for individual and planetary health. Have you heard of that? I think they mostly focus on AFA, which is that blue-green algae, which I was almost an algitarian in my raw vegan days. Like literally my lunch.
An algitarian? I've never heard that word before. I call myself the algae gal just because I've spent 13 years, studying algae, and it's such a unique. Well, we'll have to have another conversation offline about algae since. I didn't know that you'd had such a great history. There's not many of us around, although there's more, and people all around the world actually know more about it, I think, than in North America. There's quite a underground current because algae is used for so many things, not just nutrition, but now packaging, fuel, cosmetics, because it is so nutrient dense. But and I do want to help people understand that algae is a food. And there's two main types of algae. One is macroalgae and the other one is microalgae. And macroalgae is that stringy stuff that you see washing up on shore, also known as seaweed or dulse or kelp. And it's good for you because there's lots of fiber. and iodine, because it comes from the sea. That's why it's called seaweed. But there's virtually no nutrition in it. So, and that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about the other type of algae, which is called microalgae. And it's microalgae because it's microscopic in size. You can't see it with your eyes. In fact, I read somewhere that something like 1 million microalgae could fit on the head of a pin. And so, it's completely opposite to macroalgae. It has virtually, spirulina has no fiber, and chlorella has just a small amount of fiber. Macroalgae is very fibrous. Microalgae, virtually none. Microalgae, on the other hand, is loaded with nutrition. So much so that we have a quote from NASA that says 1 gram of algae has the same nutrition as 1,000 grams of fruits and vegetables. So 1,000 times more nutrition than anything. And when you think about it, when something that's that tiny, when you consolidate it, you start to understand the nutritional density, because it is pretty crazy. And I'm going to show you a chart, or a picture rather, because I help people understand how nutrient dense it is. We have tablets. We'll talk about that in a minute. But 1 tablet has the same nutrition as an entire plate of vegetables, using that same quote from NASA, because that's about half a pound of vegetables.
Oh, so, that's cool. And Catherine, by the way, I usually don't post the video. I want to start doing in-person interviews when I'm back in California.
Yeah.
Like Luke's story does, but I may or may not post this, but for people that are just listening, yeah, you showed 1 tablet versus a whole plate of veggies, right?
Yeah. So very, very nutrient dense. So that's microalgae. And as I mentioned at the beginning, algae was the first life on Earth, and so it's everywhere, especially, microalgae is everywhere, not just the sea, and the sea is only seaweed. Microalgae is in the lakes, the rivers, the streams, the soil, your aquarium, your swimming pool, but the algae that we grow in the same, and we're going to talk about spirulina and chlorella, which are the 2 main microalgae that people know about. And whether it's us or spirulina or chlorella that you get from Whole Foods or Costco, it's all grown in fresh water. Yes, there is algae in the ocean, and yes, there's blue-green algae, which is spirulina, and yes, there's green algae like chlorella in the ocean, but that's not how you are consuming it. Spirulina and chlorella are the 2 algae that are harvested as food crops, not from the ocean. Very, very important. So, and a very important thing is to understand that because of that, algae is food. It's grown hydroponically like other vegetables. Lettuce is one. I think tomatoes are grown hydroponically as well. And then I'm going to show you a picture. So what we grow it in fresh water. We grow ours in Taiwan in triple filtered spring mountain water. This is important because, and this is why you do not want algae from your local beach or the ocean, because the algae absorbs whatever's in the water. So if there's toxins in the water, they will get absorbed by the algae. That's why years ago, there was a company, I won't mention them, but they used to grow their algae in Klamath Lake. And I have scientific tests that show there were cyanobacteria in the lake. So of course they got into the algae, and that's not good for you. We do testing, by the way, third-party lab testing here in the United States. I have 3 labs that test all different nutrients and toxins and heavy metals. And there's a special lab that tests just for mycotoxins. And of course, we never have any because ours is grown in triple filtered spring mountain water. It's one of the reasons why doctors sell our algae. We don't sell actually through retail stores like GNC, only biohacking centers, cryo centers, doctors, functional medicine, now with spas, but it's because of the quality. So we grow it in fresh water, then we air dry it without high heat into a powder. Again, very important, because we're going to talk about 2 really, really important nutrients in algae. One is an enzyme called superoxide dismutase, which is destroyed by high heat. So, and most other companies do use high heat to dry their algae, because most other companies, for better or for worse, are high volume companies. So they need to get their algae to market quickly. And the way to do that is to dry it quickly. And the way to do that is with high heat. So when you use high heat, you kill enzymes like superoxide dismutase. And we're going to talk about how important that is for stopping free radical damage of your mitochondria. And there's another important nutrient in spirulina we'll talk about. It's the blue pigment. Remember, spirulina is a blue-green algae. The blue pigment is called phycocyanin. It's a long mouthful. It's spelled PHYCOCYNIN. Anyways, we're going to talk about that later on. But what that phycocyanin does, drum roll, it's been proven to kill cancer cells. I'd say that would be pretty important. So you want your phycocyanin to be working. So ours does. And then we thrust them into little tablets that we call bits because they're bits of nutrition. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I like that you brought up phycocyanin because when I was super into the AFA in that book I mentioned, they focus a lot on phycocyanin, and I guess it acts like bilirubin, has like fantastic effects on liver health.
I'll tell you, phycocyanin is unbelievable. And I'm giving a talk at Dave Asprey's biohacking conference in June. And I had to submit my talk. I'm supposed to submit it. I should have submitted it today. But anyways, I'm still working on it. But I have hundreds of references about phycocyanin killing cancer cells. It's been studied, it's been documented, it's been proven. And guess what? The pharmaceutical companies use it in their chemotherapy treatments. And I can get really geeky on you on it, and I will later on explain what it does. It basically triggers the cytochrome C molecule, which triggers apoptosis, which is the programmed cell death. But it only kills the cancer cells. I tell people it's sort of, you know how you have bubble wrap? We all like to poke that bubble wrap. So phycocyanin is like when poking one of those bubbles. It only pokes the cancer cells, leaves the rest of the bubble wrap, your healthy cells, alone. Beautiful thing. And anyways, we'll talk about more about that. But so superoxide dismutase, an easier way to say it is SOD. And phycocyanin are just two of the very important nutrients that are in, especially spirulina, not found in any other food. Phycocyanin is not in anything else. Superoxide dismutase is virtually in nothing else. But we'll talk about how your body makes it for you, but only until you get to age 30. And after that, you're out of luck.
Yeah. Catherine, have you seen or tried the fresh spirulina? Because I've tried it. It's really expensive and really inconvenient, but basically you have to buy it with a date stamped on it, and then you freeze it in cubes, and then you defrost those cubes.
Yes. So that is the only other spirulina I recommend, because it absolutely for sure has not been exposed to high heat. So that type of algae, spirulina, and ours will work beautifully for you. The trouble, as you mentioned, with frozen spirulina, first of all, it's hard to get, hard to find, hard to get. You can't travel with it. It expires very quickly. It's very messy, and you have to eat it. You can't disguise it. With ours, I'm going to show you a picture. I know people aren't, if they're not seeing this, we press our algae into little tablets about the size of a baby aspirin. This one's spirulina. See how much darker it is. This is chlorella, that you can swallow. So if you don't like the taste, you're good to go. And it's not like fish oil. There is no repeat. Once that stuff goes down, it stays down. There is absolutely no secondary flavor. So whether you take 5, 10, our NHL players take 75, you get all the benefits of frozen spirulina without any of the hassle, any of the mess, any of the flavor, our expiry dates are 3 years out. And quite honestly, it never goes bad. Technically, because algae is an unusual crop. When the growing conditions deteriorate, it never dies. It just goes dormant indefinitely until the growing conditions return. And an example of that is I read about a National Geographic team went up to the Antarctic, and they were doing some carbon dating of ice. And they got this piece of ice that was about 1 billion years old, or 1.5 billion. And they found out it had some algae on it. So they brought it back to their lab and put it in a petri dish with some water, and the darn thing started growing again 1.5 billion years later. So, if you were chewing the algae, I do. In fact, I just had some, my tongue's probably still green. You might not taste as good 10 years later, but it still has pretty much all of the pop and all the nutrients if you kept it, in your bag and didn't open it. So it's a lot easier than the frozen spirulina, but I applaud the companies that grow the frozen spirulina because it is, it's gold, but so is ours. And ours is a lot easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you ever tried growing your own spirulina? Because I had an aquarium where I gave it a shot in my first cabin, and it was really tough. I mean, it looked green, but I don't know what was happening. And it's very labor intensive. I
definitely do not recommend people growing their own algae. And here's why. And chlorella is even worse. It took the Japanese 10 years back in the 50s to figure out how to grow chlorella for mass consumption. It's a very complicated crop. And if you do it incorrectly, the water's not right or whatever, you could end up hurting yourself. Now, my plant, 99% of algae is grown in Asia. There is a small amount grown in Hawaii, but it's very mild. Algae, it's sort of a bit like wine. It's affected by the angle of the sun. And so 99% of algae is grown in Asia. It's China, Japan. We grow ours in Taiwan, which is known as the gold standard for algae. And 99% of it is consumed in Asia. That's why you don't know much about algae, because it's just not grown here. Now in Asia, you can't ride your bicycle to school or to work without going by an algae farm. What do we drive by? Well, probably factories making donuts, but other than that, corn or wheat, sugar, none of those have any nutritional value whatsoever. But there's certainly no algae farms. So the Asians, they're sort of like the French. The French keep the best wine for themselves. The Asians have all this great algae. They know that it does great things for them. By the way, the Japanese have the best longevity in the world, lowest cancer rates, lowest obesity rates, great skin and hair. They do not leave their house without taking chlorella algae. They've been taking it for 60 to 70 years, every single day. They do not take supplements there. So my dream is to grow it here in America. I drew a line across from Taiwan, and it got me to Florida, the middle of Florida. So once I have a lot more money, it's going to take about $10 million. Any investors out there, give me a call. We'll grow it here. And then my dream is to teach other countries around the world how to grow it for themselves, but under controlled conditions. Now, I will point out that there's another way to grow algae, and ultimately it may be the long-term answer. And 50 years ago, the United Nations had a global conference on spirulina. It was in 1974, so almost 50 years ago. And they declared 50 years ago that spirulina algae, was the answer to world hunger. And they're right, it is. Why? Because algae has the highest concentration of protein in the world, and it's all in individual aminos. It's a complete protein, has 18 of the 20, including the 9 that your body can't make. So, and it's eco-friendly and sustainable. It is unbelievable what spirulina will do for you. We'll talk about some of the benefits, but it's 50 years later, and that vision of feeding the world just hasn't happened yet. So there is another way that's being explored, which is growing algae in glass tubes using LED lighting. And they grow it in Iceland. I know there's a company called Orlo that grows the algae up there just for the omega-3 purposes, but it's all underground. And you can build something 10 floors of this stuff in these tubes with LED lighting. You're not going to get 100% of the same value that Mother Nature would give you with the sunlight. I'm a bit of a purist, so I still want the sunlight. However, to help the world feed themselves in the next 20 or 30 years, this could be a very valid way to go, because you're going to get 80% of probably the benefits. So algae is going to save the world. I'm convinced of it, and I'm just dedicating my life to helping people understand what it does, what it is, why you need it, and we'll get into that hopefully in a few minutes.
I love it. Yeah, there's a lot of B vitamins in it. There's choline, vitamin C, E, K, beta carotene, which there's arguments. I know a lot of the carnivores are like, that's not true vitamin A, but your liver can convert a little bit of it. But then you take that further, and I'm in like the niche place where people are picking apart all the nitty gritty, devil in the details stuff. And say, oh, vitamin A toxicity, but I think it kind of depends. I mean, if you're not doing like a whole bag a day, you're probably not going to get beta carotene overload and turn orange, right?
Yeah. Well, and I've been taking it for 13 years. I have about 100 tablets a day and half for every day. Okay, so now I'll tell you how old I am. I'm going to be 67. 67, right? Do I have any wrinkles? No.
Wow.
Do I have energy? Yes. Do I think clearly? Yes. Do I sleep beautifully? Yes. My digestion, like for my age, I should go to the Viome and have them do my biological age. I'll probably be 20.
Great. Yeah.
Algae makes you be like Benjamin Button. Literally, you age backwards. It's unbelievable what this stuff does. And I'm living proof of it. So, but what algae, the nutrients, it has 40 vitamins and minerals. You did mention some of them, and there's some of these critical antioxidants that protect the mitochondria that can't be found anywhere else. But it is, and it's all available to your body. So it's not just what you eat, it's what you absorb. And again, spirulina is 99% bioavailable because it's a bacteria. Spirulina is not even a plant. It's a bacteria. It's a cyanobacteria. No cellulose wall, zero fiber. So it gets absorbed by your body almost instantly because there's nothing for your body to break down. And while we're talking about fiber, for those paleos and carnivores that might be out there, I want to let you know that spirulina and chlorella algae do not have lectins or oxalates. Someone I have a lot of respect for, Dr. Stephen Gundry has written a book called The Plant Paradox. I've been on his podcast twice, and he loves algae and he loves our brand because, he talks about lectins and oxalates, which can be very damaging to your stomach lining and your mitochondria. And they're found in certain plants in higher quantities like kale and spinach and the nightshades vegetables. And they can be damaging for your health. Now, the reason why plants have those was because they had to defend themselves from predators and bugs. So they developed these things because they taste terrible to the animals and they bother their stomach too. So it keeps them away. But those are land plants. And what people need to remember is that algae is a water-based plant. It never had to defend itself from bugs or animals because it was in the water. Ta-da! No lectins or oxalates. So if you're carnivore, you're still missing out some great nutrients like chlorophyll. I do want to talk about chlorophyll. And you don't have to worry about any of those nasty anti-nutrients. Also, both algae are ketogenic, zero carbs, and with zero carbs. We've done tests and science has proven it. We've done it anecdotally at events. Does not decrease your ketones and does not increase your glucose. So diabetics, if you're intermittent fasting, I love intermittent fasting. I'll intermittent fast till 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock if I can. And I chow down these things all to keep me going because it cuts your hunger. It keeps your brain active, gives you energy, and does not interfere with your fasting. So there's not a lot of things that could do that. So I'm pretty bullish on that.
That's awesome. I love the 100 tablets a day. Does chlorella contain more chlorophyll than the spirulina?
Yes. So in fact, chlorella has the highest chlorophyll in the world. It's why it's called chlorella, because of the chlorophyll. And just since you mentioned that, chlorophyll, so it has 500 times more chlorophyll. I have a chart we can send you. I got all the other chlorophyll amounts from Linus Pauling Institute website. So it has 500 times more chlorophyll than arugula. It even has 25 times more chlorophyll than liquid chlorophyll, because liquid chlorophyll is usually made from, I think it's from alfalfa sprouts. So nothing has more chlorophyll than chlorella algae. And I'm going to show you a chart here that people who aren't, you can go online if you want to check this out. The chemical composition of chlorophyll is virtually identical to the chemical composition of your hemoglobin. The difference is in your hemoglobin, which is the red blood cells, has iron in the middle, and that's what carries oxygen. And chlorophyll has magnesium in the middle, but otherwise all the bonds are virtually identical. So chlorophyll has always, for centuries, has been used to help heal people. It builds your blood. And when you have healthy blood, you're going to have healthier organs, you're going to have healthier brain, you're going to have healthier cells. And also, let's not forget the chlorophyll is very alkaline. And there was a German scientist by the name of Otto Warburg who got a Nobel Prize back in the 40s. He was a German researcher, and his Nobel Prize was for discovering that cancer could not exist in an alkaline environment. It can only exist when your pH of your cells is slightly acidic. So chlorophyll is very alkalining, so it helps bring back that pH, proper pH of your cells. By the way, your blood has to be even more alkaline. It needs to be 7.34. And when you eat too much acidic food, like sugar or carbs, processed foods, your body's so intelligent, it knows that it needs to neutralize that acidity instantly, because you would die if your blood acidity changed your pH. So it pulls out minerals from your bones, your organs, your cells to neutralize that. But this can damage your immune system, also contribute to osteoporosis. This is how I got into this whole algae thing. My younger sister in Canada had developed breast cancer 15 years ago. She's fine now, but when she was preparing for her chemotherapy, her oncologist, which is a cancer specialist, told her to change her diet to an alkaline diet. Told her. But they didn't tell her what it was or why it was good for her. So she called me, and I didn't know either. And I have an MBA and was doing business, blah, blah, blah. But I researched and learned about alkaline diets and how plant-based nutrition was mostly alkaline. And it was because of this acidity issue of both her blood and her cells that her doctor wanted her to have the best and strongest immune system as she was going to go through chemo. And by helping her, I learned about plant-based nutrition. And then I realized it was a pretty important thing. And I gave up my corporate career, went back to school, studied nutrition, and found algae, which made it easy for people, because a lot of people don't like vegetables, or it's too much work. Maybe you don't live near a grocery store. I know you live on a farm. How close is the closest grocery store for you?
Oh, it's a good 45 minutes or so.
45 minutes.
And I know we jumped in. I appreciate you bringing up your history. We went 0 to 100 from the start, which I love. But I like that you brought up the hemoglobin chlorophyll connection. There is a book. I actually gave it to my friend that owns Lightwater, Victor.
I know Victor.
Sure. Yeah, I've had him on the show a couple times.
We're on the same circuit. We speak at all the same conferences.
Nice. He's a great guy. Yeah, we kayaked on my lake. And human photosynthesis. So I was going down the eat less food, breatharian path, and I'm not there anymore. But I was basically obsessed with what could I take to absorb more light? So I was going in an ice bath at solar noon, grounded. I was taking chlorophyll,
right.
I think it was liquid chlorophyll, not the right, type. But according to my research, and I think I've heard you talk about this on different podcasts.
I know where we're going.
Yeah, there's a I
can hardly wait.
There's a mitochondria chlorophyll ATP connection.
Yes.
Where, and I think there's something else in the mix.
Yeah. I can clear that up. So yes, and there's more stuff about chlorophyll I want to talk about, but there is a research paper that came out about 20 years ago that showed that when you have chlorophyll and red light, so it could be from red light therapy or sunlight, it generates ATP. And I don't know if it's time to get too geeky, but I had a chart, but I can't find it right now. So in your mitochondria, we'll get to mitochondria in a minute, the ATP is generated through a process called the electron transport chain, which is a series of 5, I call them sort of stations. And what they do is they move electrons from one station to the next until the final station where the ATP is actually generated. And the best way to think about this is, when you have a relay race, you have different runners and they pass the baton along, right, to the next runner. And then hopefully they cross the finish line and win. So for you, the finish line is ATP. But at these stations, some of the electrons need some help to get to the next station. And CoQ10 is the molecule that moves between station 2 and 3. So when you have chlorophyll and sunlight, and I honestly don't know the actual way this works, but it allows the CoQ10 molecule to recycle. So it constantly is bringing back more of the electrons at that point. So it's between station 2 and 3. So it literally, it goes, well, CoQ10 is called ubiquinone or ubiquinol. And when it's, I can't remember which one is which. One is acidic, one is reduced, and one is not. So it's anti-inflammatory when I think it's ubiquinol, and then when it goes through that little transition, it becomes a pro-inflammatory. And so this ability of the chlorophyll and the sunlight converts it back to ubiquinol, so it can go through that cycle again. So it becomes anti-inflammatory again, and so it's just like, powering up your station so you get more ATP. Pretty sweet.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's kind of like the relationship between vitamin C or ascorbate and vitamin E. Like, vitamin E will help they help basically keep each other going. And
glutathione's the same way. It regenerates other antioxidants. And by the way, algae also has the highest glutathione in the world. But that was the thing about chlorophyll and sunlight being able to generate ATP without food. Pretty amazing, right? So get out there, take your algae, go sunbathing, get your vitamin D, get your extra energy, and you'll have yourself a great day. And it was funny because when we first started almost 12 years ago, we got noticed by runners, triathletes, marathon runners, and bloggers were writing about us. And the athletes loved the spirulina for energy and the chlorella to help them recover. And I don't know whether this had anything to do with it, but you get energy from the spirulina because it's so loaded with all the protein in amino form and that get absorbed instantly because there's no cellulose wall, and it's loaded with B vitamins that convert it into energy, and it's got omega-3 and boron. But they were outside, they were running, and so spirulina has two pigments, the blue one, phycocyanin, and chlorophyll. So maybe a little of the extra edge came from the chlorophyll as they were running and were exposed to the sunlight. I don't know whether, I'm just kind of conjecturing what may have happened, but the athletes absolutely love. In fact, we had so many Olympic athletes and Olympic teams using our products that back during the Winter Sochi Olympics, I sent 2 of my team over to Russia, and we had an open invitation to the U.S. Winter Olympic Village and the Canadian, because of course I'm Canadian. So that was pretty cool to have. And if you go on our website, you'll see about 50 endorsements from Olympic and professional athletes. We don't pay them a dime, and they buy their algae, but they loved how. Now I just want to forewarn people who aren't familiar with spirulina, the kind of energy that you get is not like a stimulant, like it's not like caffeine or sugar, which are short bursts, but then you crash. The energy you get is strictly from nutrition, and it's almost unnoticeable. If you took 10 or 20 spirulina and then you just sat on your couch, you wouldn't be all super excited, but you would, or maybe a better analogy would be, if you went to bed. Because what it does is it gives you cellular energy, and I can hardly wait till we get to the mitochondria. So, and what your body does with that cellular energy is up to you. So if you took 20 spirulina and then you went for a run, you would have the best run of your life or your day or whatever, because the cellular energy is being devoted to the ATP being used for running. And if you took it before you went to bed, it would just be used for helping you sleep and do whatever. So the analogy I help people understand is, cellular energy, ATP, is like money. When you have more money, you can do more things and you have more choices. When you have more cellular energy, you can do more things and you have more choices. So the key is to generate more ATP, because that gives you what you need. And spirulina, as we're going to talk about it, and chlorella as well, to a certain degree, helps to preserve your mitochondria and that process of generating ATP. So it's pretty sweet.
I love it. I like combining it with steak, especially when I'm lazy. I love my steaks, but I'm not carnivore. I love vegetables. I like fiber. I think fiber is beneficial. But if I ever have, top sirloin and I'm just, busy and I just, don't have time, then I'll just take a bunch of your chlorella. So I'm getting the fiber, getting the chlorophyll, there's some char on my steaks. I don't have to worry about it.
That's a good point.
Neutralized by the antioxidants. It feels really good when I combine steak and your algae. So
nice. That's interesting. I know Ben Greenfield always said he would always take it after he had sushi. Same with Dave Asprey. He said he always takes it after sushi, just in case. But in fact, now that you mentioned, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I just want to get into the heavy metal thing with chlorella, because I think there are hardcore studies on that, right? On how it helps.
Endless.
With that.
Yeah. So the way chlorella, spirulina, I explain to people, is an energizing and nourishing algae. And so you usually take it in the morning because that's when you want energy, and it helps you with your brain focus because it's got essential fatty acids and boron, which helps with your brain. And, we're going to talk about the mitochondria in your brain later on. But chlorella is a wellness and detoxing algae, completely different. It does not satisfy your hunger. It does not give you energy. And we recommend most people take it at night. You can take it any time of day. I eat it all day long, but definitely before bed, because your body goes through a detox repair cycle while you're sleeping. And that's very important. Sleep is very important. And making sure you get a good repair cycle is very important. So the way that it does that is the chlorophyll, which is very concentrated in chlorella, highest in the world, which is very cleansing. It builds your blood, and it's cleansing in a number of ways. Number one, chlorophyll is a fat-based pigment. I know, again, people can't see this, but I did this little experiment 20 times at home. I put the spirulina tablets, you should do this at home, on a plate, and this beautiful blue color came out of it. That's the phycocyanin. But what was most important to me was that it dispersed evenly through the water. It looks like the Aegean Sea. And then when I did the same thing with the chlorella, darn thing didn't disperse at all. It clumped. And it was just green, obviously, because it was just, didn't have the blue. But I kept thinking, why is it clumping? Well, I found out chlorophyll is a fat-based pigment. Phycocyanin is a water-based pigment. The fat-based pigment is important because your cell membranes are made from fat. So the scientific community refers to them as lipids. And you need healthy fats to keep your cell walls permeable, to allow nutrients in and toxins out. So chlorophyll, because it's a fat-based pigment, does almost the same thing as an omega-3 or any of these other D or E, because it's a fat. So now you're getting really healthy nutrients into your cell wall, which facilitates the detox process. But on top of that, chlorella has a hard cell wall. Remember, spirulina has none. Chlorella has a hard cell wall. And in fact, it's so hard that at production, it has to be what's called cracked, or your body couldn't absorb the nutrients that are inside. We crack ours by passing ours through a sound chamber, which is another thing that distinguishes us from other companies, because the vibrations in the sound chamber are what crack the algae, the chlorella. Most other companies use the original technique, which was to tumble it with glass beads, but we found out that the glass would heat up and lead from the glass would leak into the chlorella. So not such a good thing for you. So we don't use that technique. But anyways, chlorella has been used for decades to attach and remove heavy metals, toxins. The United Nations used it at Chernobyl to pull out radiation. After the Fukushima disaster, the global supply of chlorella was bought up within 24 hours by all the Japanese, because they know it's the only thing that prevents radiation from being absorbed. We work with biological dentists who use it to pull out mercury when they pull out fillings. We have a protocol where it pulls out lime. It pulls out everything. Now, it's much better, I think, for you than activated charcoal, which a lot of people are aware of for pulling out toxins. But the trouble is, activated charcoal pulls out all minerals. So if you're not careful, you can get into a state of dehydration because you've lost all of your electrolytes. And chlorella is loaded with electrolytes. So is spirulina. So it only pulls out the bad stuff. It's got this radar. It's sort of like that, popping of the bubble wrap. It just pulls out the stuff that it knows shouldn't be there. So chlorella is cleansing because of the chlorophyll, which is very cleansing. It heals it's fat-based pigment that heals your cell walls. The hard cell wall pulls out all the heavy metals. It does have some fiber, not a lot, but some, which feed your gut biome with so they can create those short chain fatty acids. And there's something else. Oh, and also has the highest glutathione in the world, which is also very cleansing and pulls out toxins, in particular in your liver. You have the highest glutathione in your liver. So that's why, in general, chlorella is very good for detox. And, you know, you can't do a detox once a year. Even once a month isn't enough. I've got a link to a report that shows the average adult now has 700 toxins in them, like 700 toxins. That's crazy, right?
Wow. Does it help with plastic? That's like one of the tricky, like I know ozone.
Plastic?
And, like microplastics, you know, from receipt paper and stuff like that.
Well, if there were chemicals used in, which I'm sure there are in the plastics, that would attach to the plastics. It also pulls out alcohol, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Because your body converts alcohol to formaldehyde, I think. I need to check my
acetaldehyde. I had the Z-Biotics guy on that made the genetically engineered little probiotic. And
yeah. So it identifies it as a toxin. It will clear out the alcohol in your bloodstream in an hour and a half. You will be stone sober. I invite anyone to try this out. Go out and have a few drinks, celebrate something, come home, take a full pouch of, we sell them in little pouches, 30 tablets a pouch. You'll need a full pouch. Take those before you go to bed, and you'll be sober in an hour and a half, and you'll never have a hangover. We used, for a while, we were, a lot of professional wine tasters were using the chlorella, because when they're tasting wine, they actually don't want to get drunk. So they would take it before drinking. Most people take it after because they want to have a buzz and have a fun time. And you know, we're no party poopers, but so it will pull out toxins in your blood, doesn't matter what it is, in an hour and a half. Your cell structure takes about a week. Your organs are, you know, anywhere from 1 to 4 months, and it's all about the density of the cells. So it's pretty amazing. And lactic acid too. It identifies lactic acid as a toxin. So that's why athletes use it as a post-workout fuel. They take the spirulina as a pre-workout and the chlorella as a post-workout.
Wow.
So it's,
you're probably biased, but I know, like, I've been taking like medicinal mushroom extracts that aren't watered down with mycelium and starch, but for years. And some people say like reishi and chaga are like the top of the hierarchy, you know, of all of them. Are you kind of like that with spirulina and chlorella versus like astaxanthin and all the other ones out there, like the red algae? There's a ton of them, right?
Well, there's not. I don't have enough research about red algae. It's also not available that I'm aware of for mass consumption for large production. And I do know that algae is far better than sea moss. So, and the trouble with sea moss and also the phloa, there's another one. If it's grown in the ocean or a wild condition, you're just taunting the you know, you can't avoid the microtoxins. It's impossible. You have to grow algae. It's the only thing that is worse if it's wild, because you can't control the environment. It's just the way it is. So, the fun thing about, you know, red algae is that, you know, of course, that's usually that's got that pink color. That's why flamingos are pink, and that's why salmon is pink, is because there's a red algae. There's tens of thousands of strains of algae in the ocean, and for whatever reason, the spirulina and the chlorella are the two that are have been harvested the most and are used the most, and that, you know, I decided I would go deep on what we sell so I can help people understand the benefits, rather than go wide with learning a wide swath of, you know, a little bit of knowledge. So I like to go deep on what I've got. And I can't really make judgment calls on other people's products, because I don't know how they're grown or produced or dried or anything. I just know what we do.
Yeah. And you mentioned mitochondria in the brain. Do you want to dive into that for a minute? Is it the B vitamins and the amino acids, I'm guessing, that help?
Well, I want to talk, if it's okay with you, can I talk about the mitochondria in general? Because there's mitochondria in all of your cells. everything. And so the brain has the highest concentration. There are 2 million mitochondria per cell in your brain. Unbelievable. The next highest is women's eggs, which have about 600,000 mitochondria per cell. We're not per cell. And then the next after that is your heart, which is about anywhere between 5 and 8,000. And after that, it's your muscles, which are about 5,000. Just a regular skin cell or fat cell, I think, has about maybe 100. So the highest amount of mitochondria are where your highest energy needs are. And clearly, thinking is very, very energy demanding. Creating a new human is very energy demanding. Your heart is very energy demanding. So, but they're everywhere. So they're realizing, however, because of these concentrations in the brain and the heart, for example, and even the eggs, all brain issues, heart issues. In fact, just talking about the brain, there's a great book called Brain Energy written by Dr. Chris Palmer that came out a few months ago. Fantastic book. His thesis is all brain issues, doesn't matter whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, Alzheimer's, are due to damaged mitochondria. So what's going on with the mitochondria? So I'm going to show you a picture, but in your cells, you have your nucleus, and then you have all these mitochondria, again, 2 million of them per cell. And inside the mitochondria, they have their own DNA. You have your regular cellular DNA, there's about 22,000 of them. And the mitochondria, I think they have 12 or 13. I think it's 13. Anyways, they have their own DNA. But the problem is the mitochondria DNA are located exactly where the ATP is produced. And the reason why that's a problem is because nobody tells you, but the byproduct of ATP is free radicals. So your mitochondria are getting bombarded by free radicals all the time. And think of free radicals as sparks from a fire. And if you sat too close to a bonfire or a fireplace, you might get burned by the sparks, right? Well, your mitochondria DNA are getting burned by the sparks all the time. And when your and here's the thing, your mitochondria control everything, your mitochondria DNA rather, control everything in your body. They control the regular DNA. They control cellular communication. They control apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. So when they get damaged, they either mutate, and so your DNA gets replicated in a damaged form, which contributes to aging and disease, or they die, which contributes to aging and disease and dropped ATP production, or they send wrong signals. It's just a slippery slope. So the key to health is preserving your mitochondria DNA. And I'm going to show you. Well, I won't, because I know people can't see a lot of these things. So
I'll have to post this one now. You showed so many pictures.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll show you something cool. So remember I mentioned about the electron transport chain, and there's these 5 stations that it's like a relay race, and they pass the electrons from one another. And at the end, they generate ATP. So they're inside the mitochondria. Now, when things are working, then the baton gets passed and you get lots of DNA or lots of energy, ATP, everything's happy. But when they get damaged, what happens is the mitochondria basically explode, it expands. And these little stations are further apart from one another. So they can't transfer the electrons easily from one another. So even more of them leak out, which cause more free radical damage. I tell people, it's like asking Tom Brady to do a pass in a stadium that's 5 times the size of an Ulmer Stadium. It just doesn't happen. So you get into this slippery slope where the electrons keep getting leaked out and causing more and more damage. And so here's a picture of a healthy mitochondria over here. And here's a real picture of a damaged mitochondria. See all the open space in the middle? That's because that's where all the leaked electrons have caused free radical damage and inflammation. And so this is where all the communication is stopping and the mitochondria is dying. So the key to life, literally, is preserving your mitochondria, the mitochondria DNA, because then they can send the right signals. Then you're having more energy. And remember, this is energy for thinking, for your heartbeat, for your immune system, for your digestion. It's not just energy to go run to the store or, go for a walk. It's cellular energy. You need to protect your mitochondria DNA to ensure you have cellular energy to live well, not just live long. So there's two ways to do that. One is to reduce your free radicals, and the other one is to remove them. So you can reduce them. So you can either reduce them or remove them. Let's talk about the first one, reduce them. The best way to reduce your free radicals is to reduce your carb load. Carbs generate the most free radicals. And so you can do that by adopting a low carb diet or a keto diet, either one. Even better is fasting, intermittent fasting, long-term fasting, or algae. Free radicals are like exhaust from a car, and they exhaust your mitochondria. And so you have less exhaust when you have a low carb diet, and virtually none. You'll never get to zero just because just the pure fact that you're alive generates some free radicals. So that's strategy number one. Just reduce your carb load. Strategy number two is to remove the free radicals. And you can do that with antioxidants, right? We all know about antioxidants, but here's the problem. Your mitochondria are the only cell in your body with two cell membranes. It has that lipid membrane that all your other cells have, but it also has a second inner membrane. And that inner membrane does not have something called porins, which allows normally antioxidants in and out. So it's impenetrable to vitamin C and vitamin E. And that's why there's studies that have been showing that vitamin C and vitamin E do nothing to extend longevity, nothing. And this is why. It's because they can't get in there to stop the free radical damage. Now, the good news is there are 4 that can get in there, and your body makes 3 of them. And those 3 are glutathione, melatonin, and superoxide dismutase. The 4th one is chlorophyll. So what do these 4 antioxidants do? Well, they get into the inner membrane and they convert the free radicals into water. They basically put out the fire of all the free radicals. And this has been documented, studied indefinitely. And as I say, chlorophyll is the 4th one. So your body makes 3 of them. But the downside is your body only makes them until you hit 30. After the age of 30, your body basically stops making superoxide dismutase, glutathione, and melatonin. So after 30, you no longer have the protection of those antioxidants. And this is exactly when chronic disease hits, right? After 30, 40, by the way, 60% of Americans have a chronic disease. 60% of adults have a chronic disease. And when you get over the age of 30, and when you get to the age of 65, that goes up to 80%. That's crazy. But it's because they do not have the protection of the mitochondria that they used to have after the age of 30. And why is that? I kept thinking, why does Mother Nature stop making these antioxidants for us at 30? Well, humans have been on Earth for about 2 million years. We've only been living past 30 for the last couple hundred. We always died at 30. Our biology has not kept up with our longevity. And at this point, it probably won't. So it just stops making them. And the sad thing is, you can't get glutathione, melatonin, superoxide dismutase in medicinal quantities to fill the gap. So we have 2 things going on here. The lack of protection from those 3 antioxidants that can stop free radical damage plus chlorophyll. And at the same time, you've lived longer after 30, you're at 40. Now you've accumulated these toxins. This causes inflammation, damaged mitochondria. This is chronic disease. This is aging. This is the problem we're facing right now because our food has virtually no nutrition unless you grow your own, and we're surrounded by toxins. Now, the good news is, I'm not going to leave everybody on the edge of a cliff here. Algae has, and I've got the lab test to prove it, the highest concentration of melatonin, superoxide dismutase, glutathione, and chlorophyll in the world. And that's in spirulina. And chlorella pulls out toxins. Ta-da! So we are able to flatline the inflammation. And there's about 20, I can't remember if it's 25,000 or 50,000 studies that have shown that superoxide dismutase stops everything from Alzheimer's to heart disease. And there's thousands of articles similarly that show that superoxide dismutase and the blue pigment phycocyanin stop inflammation of the brain and prevent phycocyanin stops the shortening of telomeres in your brain, which protects your DNA. And if as they shorten, the DNA unravels and then you replicate in a damaged form. And on that note, because I know you asked me about brain, so this whole brain issue is huge. And we did our first clinical trials this year, and we got some of the early results just about a week ago. And we worked with a group called Gray Team, which is a nonprofit in Florida, and their goal is to reduce or stop the suicide rate of military veterans. Suicide rate is about 35% for military veterans. It's horrific. So they've been working with biohacking companies, and they wanted to, look into nutritional options. So we did a very small test, and Dr. Dom D'Agostino is going to help us write up the paper, and then we're going to do a larger test. And all we did was give the participants a pouch of spirulina, which is 30 tablets. We gave them 30 tablets a day for a month. Nothing else. They weren't, and they also had a bio strap that would measure their sleep and their HRV and all that sort of stuff. So before I tell you the results, I want to show you something. We used the EEG, a company that was called WAVI, that would measure the brain inflammation. And WAVI's been used for decades in sports, contact sports. Because when an athlete, whether they were in football or boxing, had a concussion, they had to know when they could let the athlete back into sport. So this is a picture of a brain that's healthy. You see all the red and the yellow, that shows an active brain. Then they would have a concussion, and the inflammation would be very prominent and no red or yellow because there was no brain activity. When the athlete had another EEG or is it ECG? It's the EEG, and showed red again. It showed that the inflammation was gone, that they were the brain was active, and they could go back into sport. Okay, with that in mind, this is an example of one of our results. Here's the brain EEG of the participant when they started the test. See all the blue? That's inflammation. And after 30 days, hasn't gone completely, but look at the red and the yellow. They did nothing else but take 30 spirulina tablets. And within 30 days, we got this dramatic. Now, this is the frontal lobe, and the smaller one is the back lobe. The frontal lobe is the executive function part of your brain. So that was the more important one. But the same thing happened with the back lobe, virtually zero red or yellow, and then a very high amount of red and yellow. So within 30 days, without drugs, without any other intervention, just by taking spirulina, by the way, it also improved their sleep. This particular individual, their HRV, which is your heart rate variability, the higher the number, the better. Their heart rate variability went from 55 to 80. That's a 55% increase in 30 days. Wow. They also had a sleep score that increased a small amount, like 10%. But pretty crazy, right? And and some of it was from the phycocyanin, some of it was from the essential fatty acids, some of it was from the superoxide dismutase, and just talking about phycocyanin, I got to show you one more thing. We didn't do this lab test, but I can show you. I can send you the results. Yeah. Phycocyanin, as I mentioned, has been proven to kill cancer cells. Here's in this example, they put a petri dish with cancer cells in it, and in 24 hours, they watched how the cancer cells decreased to virtually nothing from phycocyanin. And the amount that they used in this test, there's 4,000 times more phycocyanin in one of our spirulina tablets than they used in this test. Wow.
Yeah, I like that you brought up breast cancer a couple times, because I was helping someone up here with it, and I got her on the fresh spirulina, but now I know I could just get her on yours, or both, or whatever's convenient. But I appreciate all the info. Do you have time, Catherine, for like a rapid fire Q&A? Because I had listeners send in maybe like if you can, 30 seconds to a minute answers. I know you have to run here in a few minutes.
Yeah,
So
sure.
It's kind of on the same
Oh,
note.
well, actually, before
yeah.
I just want to be sure people know if they want to learn more information, they can come to EnergyBits.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we sell it, but we also write a big blog, and we have a 20% discount code, Blackburn, that gets you 20% off anything, anytime. So you don't have to, and we also sell it on Amazon. So if you want to get just a small pouch, they're only $6. Try it out first. We're not here to push the product. Try it out, feel comfortable. You could take 10 a day, the more the better. If you have an illness, please double or triple whatever the amount is for at least 2 or 3 months until you get a clean diagnosis. But it works. I promise you it works. But anyways, come to EnergyBits.com and Blackburn for your 20% off.
That's really generous. I appreciate it. Well, you just answered the first question. Yeah, because it was what's the minimum effective dose and then what's the maximum. So I'm guessing you set the serving size according to the research of the minimum affecting dose or minimum effective.
Well, when we first started, as I mentioned, we were working with professional athletes, and professional athletes know their bodies really well, and they're fine-tuned pieces of equipment. And when 10 tablets weren't doing anything for them, then we upped it to 15, 20. We finally got to 30 tablets for professional athletes. So 30 was the number that we started using as in our input into our pouches and all of our nutritional charts. But 5 years ago or 7 years ago, we started working with consumers, and their bodies are a completely different, makeup. So for nutritional benefits, we encourage you to try at least 10 tablets a day of each one. You could start with 5. Children should take half or 1 per their age. So if they're 4, give them 1 or 2 tablets a day. If they're 10, give them, maybe 5 a day until they're an adult. There is no upper limit. We have NHL players that put 75 spirulina in their smoothie before a game, and they take 75 chlorella in their smoothie after a game to pull out toxins. They need high energy, high focus on the ice. It's not necessary, but you could have the full pouch of 30 for lunch. It's a meal replacement. You won't be hungry for 5 hours for 30 calories, 0 carbs, 5 grams of protein.
I'm like you too. I love how they taste. Have you found it's like a 50-50? Like people I think they taste great. They smell great. I could chew on them all day long.
I feel like they're like my children, so I'm so honored that you like the flavor. 90% of the people hate the flavor of spirulina, so they swallow it. I chew mine, but chlorella, which is the green one, Recovery Bits,
it actually good for the dentition, right? Like the gums.
It kills bacteria in your mouth. It helps, which of course is connected to your gut biome. So if you can enjoy the flavor, I encourage you to chew them. But 99% do not like spirulina, so don't. We came up with a sassy little slogan. I don't use it very often. We used it at a fitness show. I almost hesitate to say it, but the slogan was, "It's okay to swallow." So chlorella is very dry. It tastes like a sunflower seed, and it tastes delicious if you put sea salt on it or eat it with macadamia nuts, which are ketogenic, or my favorite is the salt and vinegar flavor pistachio nut. Both macadamia nuts and pistachios, by the way, are very low in lectins and oxalates. So they're the best nut for you for that reason as well. Try to stay away from almonds. Almonds are very high in oxalates.
That's great info. Yeah. I did a deep dive into iron overload the last couple of years, and then come to a balanced perspective of some people have too much and some people have too little. I'm in the too little camp because I was plant-based for 2/3 of my life. So someone asked, are these, I guess we could say, is spirulina a substitute for iron supplements? So I know it contains a good amount.
Please, anyone who's listening, please do not take iron supplements, and also do not take calcium supplements. They are both incredibly damaging. The calcium ends up in your arteries and in your brain and in your skin, and causes in your arteries. It contributes to arteriosclerosis. You need vitamin K2 to move it out. Fortunately, there's a daily requirement of K2 in chlorella, which is another reason why it's a wellness algae. Yes, this is a perfect replacement for iron supplements, which if you take iron supplements, they can be so toxic. The iron in here is from a plant, so it's biological. And also, algae is if your body doesn't need something, it won't absorb it. So I know a lot of men are concerned about iron. It should not be a concern with the algae. So
it's so nuanced. It's like if you have hemochromatosis, which is the only risk for iron overload, donate blood a couple times a year. Problem solved. You don't have to get crazy. But that's great. This one I get a lot myself. Does chlorella remove metals, or does it just shuffle them around and they'll get
totally removes them? It chelates them. So it attaches and pulls them out, so it doesn't move them around. But here is the thing, it's a good point, because as I mentioned, 10 tablets of the spirulina will give you the nourishment and energy for at the cellular level, and chlorella, 10 tablets of that will give you the wellness cleansing benefits. But for detox, you need 20 or 30 chlorella tablets at a time, because if you don't have enough chlorella, it might just grab some of the toxins, but it doesn't have enough to hold on to them to pull them out. That's why if you just took 10 after drinking, it wouldn't work. So you need the higher quantity for detox purposes. So some people, what they do is they cycle in and cycle out. They'll do maybe a month of taking 30 tablet chlorella at night before bed. Honestly, they taste delicious with sea salt or macadamia nuts. So it becomes like a nighttime snack. And it stimulates peristalsis, which is, bowel movements. It pulls out aluminum from your brain. It's healing your mitochondria. I mean, seriously, why wouldn't you? I tell people, instead of asking yourself, why would you take algae? Ask yourself, why wouldn't you? But you do need the higher quantity of chlorella for detox.
I love it. And then last one real quick. This is probably a common question. Is it safe for pregnancy and or breastfeeding? And is it better than a prenatal?
Well, and I have to premise, sorry, I got the sun coming in here. I have to premise that I'm not a doctor and I'm not allowed to give medical advice. But we have research and articles that show why it is good for, both of them are good for pregnant and nursing moms, prenatal for sure. Remember, all the nutrients that you're taking will go to the fetus. And there's important nutrients like there's a essential fatty acid. I'm blanking on a name. Sorry. Anyways, it's absolutely rich in omegas and
DHA, EPA, ALA.
It gives you everything that your body and your baby need. And the chlorella is helpful because when you're nursing, it kills bacteria around the nipples. So that's really healthy as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've had moms. In fact, in Japan, I had some research that said that if babies were born prematurely and could not digest mother's milk and would have died, the only thing that kept them alive was spirulina in water. And I used to wonder about that until I did a deep dive. I'll ask Aaron to send you the article. The amino acid profile and almost the same nutrients in mother's breast milk is identical to spirulina. It's the same aminos in the same proportion. GLA is that omega essential fatty acid I was trying to think of. And the only place that has more GLA than spirulina is mother's breast milk. And the reason why it's there is because it's important for the baby's brain to grow, because it doubles or triples in size after birth.
Wow.
So, but you can't
appreciate how much research you've done. It's so cool. You could tell that you're passionate, and all these fly by night other algae companies, they're not putting themselves out there.
They don't know what they're selling.
Yeah.
Well, the difference for me is I started the company because of my sister having breast cancer. So I was not planning on starting a company. I just wanted to help my sister get better. And then I learned enough that I thought, well, I can help other people get better. And so, but I'm a perfectionist. And if I'm going to do something, I have to go deep and I have to know all the answers. So after 13 years, I mean, someone said, you're the chief scientific officer. I don't have a PhD. I call myself a citizen scientist. And I invite anyone to do the same thing. The science is there. There's 100,000 studies documenting the benefits of algae, except it takes a long time to understand these scientific papers and then connect the dots. Like I haven't told you yet, but your mitochondria, which are the key to life, evolved from cyanobacteria like spirulina. They are from the same place. So it makes complete sense to me that algae has everything your mitochondria need because they're basically the same thing, right? But, who would ever tell you that? Who would ever discover that? I mean,
right. I just think it's such a great synergizer, and I love that you shine light on that, whether it's sunlight or red light, or now that we're going into the summer, I'll probably start playing with cold plunges just for a few minutes and combine it with your algae. And
cryotherapy, it up levels everything. The key is to get rid of those zombie sent-in cells, and we all have cancer cells. They only turn into cancer when your immune system or your mitochondria are weak and can't get rid of them, because they need to get rid of them by triggering apoptosis. And so the spirulina does it for you with the blue phycocyanin. So I just it saddens me that cancer and heart disease represent 80% of all deaths, and they're not going down, they're going up. And so, whatever the medical community is doing doesn't seem to be working. So what have you got to lose? Here's a gift from Mother Nature, 4 billion year old gift. She's just waiting for you to try it out, but you got to be sure you get something from that's pure and active. And I know ours is. I can't speak for other algae companies, but
I love it. Yeah, and you combine it with a few other things, Royal Rife machines and ozone and whatever. And it's just crazy.
I just bought an ozone machine, and
cool.
I have a red light therapy. I know all about the Rife machine. I mean, I'm deep. I'm right in there. I'm a Reiki healer. I'm a Reiki master. I'll do anything to help people get healthy naturally. Because once you get sick, like the other thing is you need to know it. The inflammation, they call it the silent killer, because it can go on for 10 years and there aren't even any symptoms. By the time you have symptoms, you've been experiencing damage probably on average for 10 years. Right. And then when the symptoms happen, you ignore them, right? Because we're all so busy. And I'm the same way. And then you end up with a disease, a chronic illness that takes years to unravel, and you spend all of your money and your time and your emotion trying to fight it and gain back your health. Don't let that happen. Be proactive, because there's stuff going on inside. Learn how your body works. We know how our cell phones work. We plug them in every day to get new energy. Well, your body needs to get plugged in too. It's called mitochondria.
Catharine, this was so much fun. Thanks so much. I'll post all the links below, and stick around as I close out the show. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Take care.
That's a wrap for today. That was really fascinating to listen to Catharine talk about spirulina and chlorella, because I've been taking them for so many years, and it's really cool to hear the specific mitochondrial benefits that they have. I found it fascinating when she said that you have to take 30 to 50 tablets of chlorella at a time to get that heavy metal detoxification effect. I've always felt that people generally underdose supplements. I know she calls these substances food, but taking too little, you're going to get no effect, and perhaps even a negative effect from not taking the optimal dose. So I like her education around that. And I like the presentation of her product. She includes these little tins that you could bring with you in your purse or man bag. And you have one for chlorella tablets and one for spirulina. And I just keep those in my bag, and I'll just pour some on my hand. I don't even count it, and just knock it back when I'm on the road, especially if there's not a lot of high quality food around. I've found these to be tremendously helpful. Let's say I'm road tripping and my usual go-to is Chipotle, because I think that's one of the cleaner fast food places that I've been to, pretty much the only one the last 10 years or so. But airport food as well, really anything that makes you feel heavy We all know that feeling when you go out and eat something and it's just sitting there like a huge brick in your gut. I find taking really chlorophyll-rich chlorella and or spirulina tablets, ideally both, really helps to balance out a less than ideal meal when you're eating out. And as I told Catherine, I love to just take the chlorella with my steak. If I don't have time to steam some broccoli or cook up some bell peppers, it's so quick to just slam chlorella tablets with my top sirloin steak. And I really feel that it balances it out. I did disagree when she said that vitamin C and vitamin E can't get into mitochondria to help remove free radicals, but I don't have to agree with everything that every guest believes. That would be a very boring podcast. I've listened to those, so I know. But it's my understanding from my research that vitamin E can get into the mitochondria. It is, in fact, a fat-soluble vitamin, and it will absolutely neutralize free radical cascades, specifically from the domino effect of lipid peroxidation. Once it has begun, it won't stop it from happening, but once lipid peroxidation has begun, it will stop it in its tracks. And of course, vitamin C goes in there and regenerates vitamin E once it's been spent and donated its electron to stop the free radicals. So I think it's easy to get into that perspective. I've been there where one thing's better than another thing, or one supplement's better than another. And my current perspective is a lot more balanced than that, I think, where everything has its place, everything is a tool, and we just have to know how and when to use these different tools. So as far as these really high quality spirulina and chlorella tablets, my favorite way to use them is, as I mentioned, if I don't have time to cook up vegetables, which I like to balance that out with my steak. If I'm eating out and I'm eating something that's suboptimal, then I'll include that, and that'll help balance it out with all of the nutrients in the chlorella and or the spirulina. Another option that I didn't mention is hiking. Going out in nature on a really long hike. I used to do 10-mile hikes or so, and I used to carry with me that standard trail mix with the almonds and the cashews and the raisins and M&Ms. I know when I worked at Sports Chalet, an old sporting goods store, we sold trail mixes like that, and they were just really horrible ingredients. So a much better choice would be your favorite beef jerky or venison jerky or some type of red meat jerky and these tablets. That would be my ideal snack on a very long hike. Then add in some ketone shots, some electrolytes, maybe some master amino pattern, and you're feeling incredible if you're on an all-day journey. So if you want to check these out, you can go to EnergyBits.com, and if you use the discount code Blackburn, you'll save 20%. I like that they provide multiple different options. So if you just want to dip your toe in and try it, they have a $25 sample pack, or you can go all the way like I did and just get the 1,000 tablet canister, which comes with a little travel tin. And I encourage you to experiment with chewing them. It makes your mouth green and you need to wash your mouth out with water afterwards. But I personally love how they both taste. And chlorella is a deodorizer. So if you know someone with bad breath, that's a deeper issue to work on long term, but short term fix, I would just chew on these tablets and see what that does to someone's oral health. My website is matt-blackburn.com. I have my CLF protocol up there, calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. Those are 3 accumulations that increase in the body over time and accelerate aging, contribute to multiple different disease processes. I just made a post recently on fibrosis and 8 causes of fibrosis and what to do about it. That is one that is not talked about often, but it is a really deep issue because with any condition, whether it's autoimmunity, lung disease, diabetes, even environmental toxins, anything that causes irritation and inflammation will lead to scar tissue formation, aka fibrosis. Fibrosis is a natural process that our body uses to treat injury, but it's supposed to go away. And the problem is, especially as people age biologically, it builds up, especially after multiple surgeries and implants of various sorts and different things. Then you really have runaway scar tissue formation. And that's where serrapeptase and nattokinase, these powerful proteolytic enzymes, can step in and start breaking down that scar tissue. So one of the first Mitolife products I came out with is called Dissolvidol, and that is a combination of serrapeptase and nattokinase. I've used it as a painkiller. I just started strength training again very heavily. Went too hard, didn't give enough time for recovery, just working out every single day. And I had some pretty severe upper body tension. And I took a ton of systemic enzymes. And within 24 hours, the pain went from an 8 down to a 2. So it's pretty powerful and underrated, especially for pain. People don't often think about systemic enzymes. They go to the topicals, which that's great. Combine it with, say, the Shen Blossom pain topicals that they have, like the Sport one. I combined with the Dissolvidol, and that was very effective. If you want to see all my recommended products, you can click on Shop on the Matt Blackburn website. Next week's show will be with the owner of Gaia Heartworks, Patrick. He sells the peat moss comforters that I have on my website. He also has mattress toppers, vests made of peat moss, pure peat fiber, and even just the fabric if you want to make your own scarves and make your own clothing. If you're a seamstress, out of the peat fiber, you can do that as well. It's a really powerful material, as he goes into in that show. And we definitely went more energetic than physical. So if you want the physical breakdown of the benefits, you probably just want to go to the website. But if you're looking forward to hearing about the energetic benefits, then next week's show delves really deep into that. Mitolife is my brand. You can find that at mitolife.co. If you click on Shop, you see 3 tabs there: Living, Water, and Wellness. Under Living, you'll see our fitted grounding sheets. And one thing I was thinking about the other night is it's very cold. I've actually heard that complaint by a friend's husband. She said he doesn't like how cold it is when he lays down to sleep at night because the silver threads are actually pulling up the cold from the earth. So it's a natural electricity-free cooling pad, which a lot of people know now that being cooler improves your sleep quality, especially as you're falling asleep. That really helps to drift us off into a good night's sleep, is being slightly cold or sleeping on a cold surface. So that's a side benefit that a lot of people never consider with these grounding sheets, is the silver threads make it naturally cool. And ideally, you do rod to earth, but if you can only do in the wall, in the third prong, I would just experiment with it and see how you feel. If you feel better, keep doing it. If you feel worse, obviously don't keep using it. There are a lot of factors that determine how someone gains benefit from these grounding sheets. And the main one is where they live. And every environment is going to have a different electromagnetic field environment. both ambiently and underneath the ground in the earth, actually EMFs traveling through the earth itself. So it's impossible to know all of the variables. So in my opinion, the best thing to do is just to experiment with it and see if it works for you. I personally like the Magnetico sleep pad, but that is a much bigger investment, about 30 times more investment or so than these grounding sheets. And so these are a great place to start with improving your sleep. Under the water tab, you'll see the new 7-stage water solution. I've talked about this a lot. It's 2 years in the making. Finally, it's available. A really easy to use and effective under-counter drinking water filter that is easy to take in and out, even in rentals. The intimidation factor seems to be the biggest thing hindering someone from buying their own water filtration unit. It just seems too overwhelming to keep up with it, maintain it, install it, all of that. With this, we make it so easy, especially if you have a plumber. And once it's installed, it takes literally 2 minutes to change out the filters. And that's depending on your municipal water source. If you're on municipal in a city versus a well or a spring, it's going to be a more rigorous schedule of replacing the filters. But we have them available there on the website. Under that water tab, you see replacement cartridges, and you could buy them all individually. So I'm really proud of this system. It was a lot of frustration and hours of phone calls and research that went into this system. So it was truly a labor of love, and I'm already getting phenomenal feedback from customers about it. They're absolutely loving it. And then under the wellness tab, you'll see all of the Mitolife supplements. And I keep a close eye on prices in health food stores. I spend a lot of time in supplement sections at various stores, kind of spying around and looking at what's out there. And I pay special attention to the price on products. And I try to keep it competitive, which is impossible if you're competing with websites like Amazon and discount supplement stores and whatever, where the quality is questionable. But when you're going straight to the source and the manufacturer, you tend to pay a little bit more, but you're assured that the quality is there because you're buying it direct. That's what I prefer to do versus going through third parties. So the reason why I bring all of this up is that I recently lowered the price on 3 products: the magnesium, the dairy absorb, and the oyster. And I lowered each of them by $5, which ends up being a substantial amount, especially if you're using a discount code, as a lot of people do. So it's always a fun balancing act, finding the best price, not making it too low so I go out of business, having enough capital to create new products, which is what I'm really interested in. I actually have 3 in the works right now, 2 of which will be released in the next 2 weeks. And I'm really excited about those, and I think you guys will really love them. And once again, with supplements, it's just about having tools in your toolkit. There are a lot of people out there preaching a message with coaching programs that they're selling that you need their coaching program, but you don't need any supplements because supplements are all placebo and they don't heal you. But buy my ebooks, buy my coaching program. I think it could all work. And once again, as I was saying earlier, one thing is not better than another. That is a common trap that people fall into. I've seen absolute miracles happen with animals and supplements where the placebo does not apply. They don't know that they're taking Shilajit or whatever supplement, elk velvet antler, that they're getting. They have no clue, and yet their pain goes away. They stop limping. They gain their energy back. They're sleeping better. Whatever it is, animals, dogs, pets do not experience placebo effect. And that is proof that nutritional supplements work. So I'll stop ranting on that. I should make a whole show about that at some point, because I find that whole philosophy that we don't need supplements very fascinating, especially in today's world where the soil is just trashed. There's poisons floating around everywhere, and we do need this extra support to keep our bodies strong. So that's all for today. As this gets posted, I will be on the road with my 2 cats heading down to California. I'm moving down there with my girlfriend to be closer to our families and to have to fly less. I was flying cross country every 2 to 3 months, and that was very exhausting. I don't like missing birthdays. I love my family and very close to my family, and I often don't miss holidays. And last Christmas, I don't think I told the story on my show, but it was like Trains, Planes, and Automobiles with John Candy. It was literally like that, going down there and coming back. Coming back was the hardest part because Southwest Airlines delayed the flight for 5 hours and made us wait at the airport, and then canceled it. And then we couldn't find a rental car within a couple hundred miles. So I kept having to spend hundreds of dollars Ubering north to eventually Sacramento. And then finally the next morning getting a rental car and then driving the 14 or so hours home. So all that to say, I'm tired of airports. I would rather drive to know that I'm going to get to the destination, and you don't have to deal with the TSA touching sensitive areas and all of that, because I've been wearing my continuous glucose monitor from Levels, and you can't walk through the scanner with that. It's going to mess up your readings. And so I was opting for the pat down every time. And one time, I think the guy was enjoying making me suffer, so he made the pat down take 20 to 25 minutes. So my current belief with traveling is that driving is king, and I would much rather drive now than fly. But I am keeping the spot here in Idaho. I think this is one of the best places to be in the country. It's very remote, and so there's that psychological aspect to deal with of being disconnected from civilization, but that definitely has its benefits as well. So there's drawbacks and benefits, just like living anywhere here on the planet. So anyway, that's the life update. Check out the Mitolife Academy on YouTube. I put up 2 videos a month on various topics, different supplements or protocols that I'm experimenting with, my new thoughts. And then the last day of every month, I do a live Q&A. It's usually a couple hours where you can ask me anything. So that's been a lot of fun. It's $15 a month. And if you start your subscription, now you'll gain access to the previous couple years of content. So that's it. I'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.